Akira Toriyama was definitely a hero of mine. That would be an understatement. And I was trying to determine if I wanted to do a tribute video to him. I've never done a tribute video before, and it felt weird to even think about doing that, and then it felt weirder not to do it. So I'm going to share with you some of the reasons that Akira Toriyama has meant so much to me over the years. And I hope that if you're feeling sad about the loss of one of the greatest creative minds that we've had in our lifetime, that this helps in some way, or that you don't feel alone in feeling that way. The main reason that I want to do this is because in my personal life, one of my main motivators is expressing gratitude. And so I have a lot of gratitude to express to Akira Toriyama, the creator of Dragon Ball, the creator of so many amazing things. And without him and without his influence, I can honestly tell you that Vasco Toys would not exist. I would not be an artist, and this YouTube channel would not exist. When I was a kid, just like many, many other kids in the early 2000s, my after-school time was dominated by Dragon Ball. And when Dragon Ball was on TV, I was in the living room with my two brothers, and nothing else mattered to us for that 30 minutes. That was everything to us at that time. In fact, I remember back when I was a kid, the way I discovered Dragon Ball was from one of my best friends down the street. His name was Greg, and he introduced us to Dragon Ball, and it changed my life forever. There hasn't been another franchise that kind of like took over my creative mind the way that Dragon Ball did. I remember as a kid watching that and just being completely engulfed in it every second that I spent watching it, and it carried over into my own personal creativity. It wasn't just that I loved the show, it's that it inspired me to be creative. And at that time, I was somebody who really loved to draw. I was somebody who wanted to be artistic and had a little bit of talent for it. And because of Dragon Ball Z, I was just constantly sketching things out in notebooks and just drawing Goku, Goten, Gohan, Piccolo, Vegeta, everybody that you could think of from the show. I wanted to draw them, and I wanted to get better every single time. And honestly, when I first started out, I wasn't that good. I mean, I had a little bit of talent, but what happened was I started to draw and I started to build my confidence, and I had family members and friends and all of these other people telling me that my drawings were good, and so it pushed me to continue on. My point of reference was the masterpiece artwork of Akira Toriyama. Looking at what I was seeing on Cartoon Network, looking at what I was seeing in promotional images, and that was my goal. So there was always this extremely high goal that I would honestly never really be able to achieve, but something that kept me going, kept telling me, like, if you want to be creative, you want to continue to work hard, and you got to get better every single time. And that's something that carried with me throughout my life. And in school, I was the kid that everyone knew. I was the guy who drew the Dragon Ball Z stuff. I was always that kid. Everyone would, my friends would ask me to draw them pictures. My teachers were always seeing me draw Dragon Ball Z. I even convinced my art teacher in high school to allow me to do some Dragon Ball Z artwork when everybody else was doing other things. And so I was just always compelled by Akira Toriyama. I was always compelled by his creations, and I'm so thankful for that. And if I'm being honest, I had some people that were really close to me that are unfortunately no longer with us, that I have some really fond memories of playing Dragon Ball Z Budokai with, watching the show with, collecting the trading cards, and just establishing some really beautiful childhood memories with some people that I can unfortunately no longer make memories with. And while it is exceptionally sad that he is gone, especially at such a young age, what is incredibly happy is the impact that he's had on millions of people throughout the world. And that is really a gift that not many artists get to give. That is really something that is special, and there is only a handful of people in our lifetime who've been able to even come close to creating such an expansive world that has touched so many people worldwide and will continue to inspire people for generations through the characters and stories that he created. I was so obsessed with Dragon Ball as a kid. I had the action figures. I was watching the show. I had trading cards. I collected the trading cards. I didn't even play the game. I just wanted the cards because I wanted reference material as much as I could find to draw Goku and all the characters. But I also really fell in love with the video games, and I was obsessed with getting my hands on, I think it was Dragon Ball GT Final Bout, which was a PlayStation 1 game. And I never got it. And then when Dragon Ball Z Budokai came out, my brothers and I and my friends and everyone who I knew that loved Dragon Ball Z, we all lost our mind and we all had to play this game, and we were all trying to figure out how we could unlock the characters, who could complete the most, missions and quests and all the kind of things that you could do there, the bonus content that you could unlock. And I remember it just being this incredibly pure time in my childhood where I just had this group of people that were so special to me that loved Dragon Ball that I could enjoy it with. I even remember when I got to college and I started to make friends and I was discovering what my other friends' interests were and things like that when they were growing up, and a lot of them loved Dragon Ball. So a lot of times, even in college, we had Dragon Ball Budokai Tenkaichi 3 tournaments where we were all playing against each other. Who could be the best? What characters could each person use? Who was everyone's favorite? And so those kinds of memories are really invaluable, and none of them would exist if it wasn't for Akira Toriyama. And so that's something that I've carried with me throughout the years. I had a period of time, in my 20s where I wasn't as much thinking about Dragon Ball, as I am now as someone who creates Dragon Ball dioramas. But even though I wasn't, fully entrenched in it at that time, the love for it never left me. I still continued to draw during that time. I still have some drawings from that time where, I was still trying to create in Dragon Ball style. I was creating some of my own characters, and it's funny to look back on it because I don't even remember a lot of the things that I was creating character-wise. But luckily, I've saved all my drawing notebooks and stuff so I can look back and have those memories and just remember what that time in my life was like, which is a really special thing. It's 40 years now that Dragon Ball has been in existence. And I think, personally, I've learned a lot from watching Goku. I've learned a lot from seeing him in different scenarios as a hero. I've learned a lot about heroics. I've learned a lot about storytelling. I've learned a lot about character progression from him and also all of his former enemies that turned to be the Z Fighters, which was such a cool thing for me to understand as a kid. I never realized, that someone could go from being a bad guy to being a good guy. In fact, the two examples that I remember realizing that from as a childhood come from my two favorite things. The Rocky franchise with Apollo Creed, starting out as the villain, then becoming a beloved hero. And then the same thing with Dragon Ball Z. And for me, the way I watched Dragon Ball Z, the first instance of that was Vegeta in my mind. Because when I saw Z first and saw the Saiyan saga, saw in the Frieza saga he was kind of in between. Sometimes he helped, sometimes he didn't. And then, from the Cell saga on, how he progressed. And thought that was incredibly cool. And then once they released the original Dragon Ball, I realized Yamcha, Tien, even Krillin, what started out as a rival, all of these characters started that way. Piccolo was a villain and became, one of Goku's allies. And so that was a really interesting thing to experience as a child, to see that character progression happen. And once you start to get exposed to those kinds of things, it starts to make you think about things differently from a creative standpoint. And just also from, Goku, my favorite character, most people's favorite character, I think, he had just this amazing confidence, although he also was naive at times. He was always confident in his abilities. And even when he recognized that somebody was better than him, he always went to, I'm going to train and I'm going to get better and I'm going to overcome that challenge. That's just an incredible life lesson that Akira Toriyama taught so many people through his storytelling. So eventually my artwork transitioned from just constantly drawing to kind of nothing, where I thought, hey, I'm not using my artistic ability. And I did discover dioramas. I had always loved action figures, but I discovered dioramas, and then I started to discover the SH Figure Arts Dragon Ball Z figures that are out there that I collect, and realizing that you can create dioramas for those figures. So I started to do that, and I started to really enjoy Dragon Ball again through the lens of action figures and through the lens of dioramas, which I've created tons of at this point, and just really love every single time that I get to do a Dragon Ball inspired diorama. And I just want to end by saying thank you, Akira Toriyama. Thank you for putting your creativity into the world and making the world a better place in terms of sharing positive messages, sharing artwork, sharing things that matter to you, and giving a piece of yourself to so many millions of people that never got the privilege to meet you, but you impacted through your artwork. That is truly the greatest gift that any artist could ever give.